Good morning, everyone. We'll just wait a few minutes for the majority of you to join, and we'll make a start in a few minutes. Hello, everyone. You can see some of you are putting greetings into the chat. It's nice to have you here. We'll be making a start in a few minutes once we've had a few more, given participants a chance to join us. I can see lots of you joining from different parts of the world. You're very welcome. Oh, good afternoon in India. Beg your pardon. It's 10 o'clock in the morning UK time. Just a quick note for those of you who are just joining us, we'll leave it a minute or so and then we'll get started. We'll just wait for the majority to join. Okay, I think we'll make a start. So hello everyone and welcome to the second in our series of Big Think webinars for international school leaders, school owners and school groups. We're delighted you've joined us in what we hope will be a useful, informative and inspiring session that's all about thinking big about the future of international education. I'm Susie Williams of the International Schools team at Pearson, and I'll introduce you to today's speakers shortly. However, before we get started, I'd just like to draw your attention to the chat, which I see you found, and the Q&A boxes. If you have any technical questions as we go along, please do pop those into the chat and we'll aim to resolve them for you. And please use the Q&A box to submit any questions you have on today's topic. There will be time at the end of the webinar for discussion, and we'll aim to get through as many of the questions you post as we can. Finally, to help us understand a bit more about all of you here today, we have a quick poll which will be appearing on your screens now. In it, we'd like you to please tell us what sort of international school you are joining us from and what your role is. So if I could just give you a minute or so to complete that poll, that would be great. So yes, for those of you who are joining us later, we're just starting with a quick poll to ask what sort of international school you are joining us from today and what your role is within school. Okay. So the results here. So we've got 49% of you are from international schools offering a British curriculum, 9% offering an IB, 3% offering a US, and a mix is 6%. 3% school groups, school owners, and 29% others. And roles, so we've got a good mix here, great. So principals and head of school, vice principals, member of senior leadership teams. Wonderful. Thank you, everybody, for that poll. That is extremely useful for us. So without further ado, I am delighted to introduce our speakers for today's webinar, who you should see their lovely faces at the top of the screen. Matt Evans and Eddie Connor are in-house vocational experts, and special guest Alex Juniper from the International School of Geneva. Matt Evans is our international vocational lead at Pearson. He provides consultation to centres and governments around the world on how vocational pathways can be implemented to education programmes. He's also an experienced education practitioner, having spent many years managing and delivering vocational education programmes as part of the senior leadership team in various UK colleges. Eddie Connor is Head of International Solutions, BTEC and Apprenticeships at Pearson. Based in Munich, he works with international school groups and country governments around the world, helping them build sustainable vocational systems to deliver employment-focused education that prepares learners for higher education and careers. And finally, we're delighted to welcome our external guest, Alex Juniper. Alex is Director of IB Diploma and IB Career Programmes and Assistant Principal at the International School of Geneva. Alex will be sharing with us all of her valuable insights into integrating vocational education into an international school curriculum a little later in the session. Welcome, Matt, Eddie, and Alex, and over to you.
Thank you, Susie. Thank you very much. Yes, welcome everybody to this session. I have to say, when we started the planning for this, and when Susie was talking to us about the big think and vocational education, is it time for Cinderella to be invited to the International School Board? It started a little bit of a conversation inside our team about does vocational education, is there still that perception that it doesn't belong here? Does Cinderella should she not be at the ball? As per the fairy tale, as per the pantomime story, and is vocational education like Cinderella only there by the influence of others, by magic? And it raised a few eyebrows and it got us thinking. And we're thinking really that if vocational education is Cinderella, that's also the key theme of this. It's the storyline for the international school, because it can join up all of the pathways of learning. And one of our teams suggested that if Cinderella is vocational education, that potentially the stepsisters are academic qualifications, looking down their noses at vocational qualifications and that education pathway. And really, they're a little bit empty. They don't really have those real world skills. Okay, so that might be a little contentious, and I don't mean to start a fight here. But what I really am starting here is to hopefully start this engagement with you and make you think a little bit about vocational education and how it could be and really should be an integral part of the international school offer. If I stay a little bit with the coming to the ball analogy, I think we should appreciate here that not only should vocational education be at the ball, but that without it, the ball might not have happened in the first place. Who would have marketed the event, designed the tickets, planned the theme, organized the food and drinks, etc. And you as leaders of international schools, you have a remit to prepare young people for this fast changing and disruptive future that we're living in at the moment. And to do that, these learners, they need to have a range of relevant, robust and recognized education programs that supports the development of the skill sets that they need. They're going to benefit them in the future, whichever pathway they take to get there. I have personal experience, and I see that more and more governments are investing in vocational education to help drive their economies. I see that universities are accepting more and more learners with vocational qualifications onto their undergraduate programs because the universities value the skill sets, such as being able to learn independently, that vocational learners have. And I work with employers a lot in our partnerships, and I know that employers are far more likely to hire staff who can be effective in their role from day one. So shouldn't international schools offer vocational education to help prepare these future employees? I think they should. Matt?
Matt, you're just muted.
Great, thanks a lot, Eddie. So following on from that, technology and the need for wider skill sets is affecting the world of work at a pace in ways that we have not been heard of before. So ask yourself, what jobs might be available to a child entering school today when they enter the labour market in 2035, which sounds a long way off, but it's only 14, 15 years away. The key thing is to ensure that they're prepared for whatever they may face. In a changing education landscape, students need to learn transferable skills to complement their areas of study. We talk about applied learning to differentiate from more academic and knowledge-based learning. The focus of vocational education is on practical skill-based learning. It's more about acquiring broader skills across a sector and preparing students for their futures in work. We're generally referring to skills in the following three main categories. We look at cognitive and problem-solving skills. So they use critical thinking, approach non-routine problems, apply expert and creative solutions, and use systems and technology to do so. We look at intrapersonal skills, so communicating, working collaboratively, negotiating and influencing, self-presentation. And we look at interpersonal skills, so self-management, adaptability and resilience, self-monitoring and development, some of those skills which we just referred to in the introduction. The majority of vocational qualifications will have units for assessment of these skills where relevant. For example, where learners are required to undertake real or simulated activities akin to those in working field of their chosen area. In the ever-changing education landscape, which we see today as a result of factors such as the COVID pandemic, vocational qualifications offer students adaptability for the future. The transferable skills mean they won't be tied to a job, which may be the victim of external factors, but rather they'll be able to use these skills to explore other fields which they may be interested in. Vocational education isn't just about getting a student to university, it's about preparing them for life. So we've got a poll here, which I'd like you just to have a brief think about. So according to employers, which factor is the most important when recruiting school and college leavers? So we have general academic ability, aptitude or talent for work, and attitude to work. So if you just take a minute to have a little think and be honest about the answer rather than trying to second guess it, just to get an understanding of where your ideas are. I think this poll will really show the perception as well of how we see it. Okay, so outcomes there, we've got 8% who feel that general academic ability, which is a lot lower than I thought it would come out, but it's very interesting to see that. Aptitude or talent for work at 44%, and very closely there, attitude to work at 48%. So that's really interesting. So these three key percentages to consider when thinking about the skills that your students will need when they apply for work. The Confederation of British Industry, along with Pearson Education, did a skills survey in 2017 and found that by far the most important factor employees consider when recruiting school and college leavers is their attitude to work, with 86%. And this was followed by their aptitude for work at 63% and the general academic ability at 43%. So in terms of the order, it was the same to what how you've just voted there, but obviously the percentages were far different. So we really need to be looking at this attitude to work and how students are actually going to feel about work when they leave education and enter the world of employment. So 65% is standing out in the middle of the screen. And that's 65% of today's 12-year-olds will do jobs that don't yet exist. So the topic of vocational education and narrowing the skills gap isn't just about the jobs which exist today. We need to think about tomorrow's world and what that may hold for our young learners who are just starting early years education. This study was carried out by the World Bank and UNESCO, and this percentage here has resonated across the employment world, and it's something which we need to consider as working in the field of education. So returning to the question from earlier in the presentation when we started, what jobs might be available to a child entering school today when they enter the labour market in 2035? If we think back just 14 years ago and ask ourselves, how common were the jobs which we see here? So an app developer, a web designer, e-commerce agent, or a drone operator. Even jobs which we may not think about, such as a video assistant referee in sport. Now also ask yourselves, how many qualifications were available to give the people who are now doing these job roles, not only the specific skills which they need, but also the wider transferable skills. So to take people from one job and put them into another, such as a drone operator. Technology has introduced completely new models for practicing a range of job roles and new demands. Practical, ethical, commercial, and cognitive in order to master these job roles. We now see specific vocational qualifications in such things as esports, web design, artificial intelligence, in order to give students the skills and knowledge they need for the changing world. The skills which learners gain during their vocational qualifications will stay with them throughout their life, such as presentation skills, the 6 Ps of marketing, or just simply how to converse with each other and also their colleagues. All are useful for progression, but also for a job and for their future employment. With the world of work evolving at an unprecedented pace, many people are talking about how education needs to evolve in the 21st century. Here, for instance, is Jack Ma, the former CEO of Alibaba, one of the world's largest e-commerce companies, speaking at the 2018 World Economic Forum. And at this forum, he stated that education is a big challenge now. If we do not change the way we teach, 30 years from now, we will be in trouble. Because the way we teach, the things we teach our kids are the things of the past 200 years. It's knowledge-based, and we cannot teach our kids to compete with machines. They are smarter. We have to teach something unique so that a machine can never catch up with us. If he's right, does this future entrap us? Should this frighten us, and what can we do about it? So on to the next poll. So we just want to know, how well does your school meet the learning profile of every learner which you have? First option, every individual's needs are met in relation to their style of learning and their career ambitions. Or there are options for all students to access both vocational and academic qualifications. Only the higher achievers are able to access both vocational and academic qualifications. Or vocation qualifications are for the lower achieving students only. Or finally, we do not currently offer vocational qualifications. So we'll just give you a little bit longer on this poll because there's a few different ones to consider. Okay, so if we just have a look at the outcome. So 67%, easily the highest there, do not currently offer vocational qualifications. So hopefully this session will really get you thinking about that and the need for them within centres. The next point there, 14%, there are options for all students to access both vocational and academic qualifications. Brilliant. And then in joint third, we've got every individual's needs are met in relation to their learning style and career ambitions. And vocation qualifications are for the lower achieving students only, which is an interesting one. And then on 3%, only the higher achievers are able to access both vocational and academic qualifications. So at the other end of the lower achieving ones. So that's really interesting. So thank you for answering those. Gives us things to think about and hopefully yourselves. So moving on. So can vocational education really give students everything they need? So until this point of the session, the focus has been on how vocational education can provide students with the skills they need for work. But what about if they want to progress to higher education? Due to the robust quality assurance processes that suites of vocational qualifications, such as BTECs, are subject to, they are increasingly being recognised by ministries of education and universities around the globe. For example, 1 in 4 students with a BTEC, a suite of vocational qualifications offered by Pearson, will progress to university in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, America, and Canada to study a higher education course. Feedback from universities shows that what the students may lack a little academically, they more than make up for with their approach to the course, the transferable skills which they bring and their ability to organise their workloads. Universities are also adapting their traditional courses and making students world ready rather than just equipping them with a degree and sending them on their way. For example, Polish universities are now taking a level 3 work skills and putting it into the final year or two of study for undergraduates, giving them the vocational as well as the academic skills needed for employment. In these uncertain times, vocational qualifications have also proven to be resilient to external factors. Whilst we saw the cancellation of examinations around the world in 2020 due to the assessment methods used, Pearson International vocational qualification results were released without delay, meaning that students were able to progress with confidence. So what does the future hold? Pearson contributes to the evolution of thinking and the shaping of education policy around the education and employment needs of the 21st century through major research projects such as the Future of Skills, in which researchers from Pearson, Oxford University, and the Ideas and Innovation Foundation, Nesta, embarked on the most comprehensive research project on this topic to date, with the mission to better predict how major societal and economical trends and the interactions between them will affect the future of work. The research sets out the factors that are influencing changes in future skills needs, including technological change, globalization, demographic change, environmental sustainability, urbanization, and increasing inequality and the political uncertainty. Our research shows that jobs won't be human versus machine, but rather human and machine. The future of work is ours to shape if we can find ways to blend human capabilities with technology. The highest regarded education bodies in the world, such as the International Baccalaureate, recognise this ever-growing need to close the skills gap, and as a result, offer alternative vocational learning pathways. 2006 saw the introduction of the IBCC, which is the Career-Related Certificate, which was then later relaunched as the IBCP in 2014. After 6 years under the new name, there are now over 220 schools offering the IBCP in more than 20 countries, many of which use Pearson BTEC qualifications as the vocational arm.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you. And that's a nice little segue then into a quick session with Alexandra from the International School of Geneva. And thank you very much, Alex, for joining us and sharing your experiences about how you integrate vocational education into an international school. perhaps would be good just to give us a little bit of background about the school and your history.
By all means. So the International School of Geneva, called Ecolant, actually began in 1924 with the oldest international school in the world. And the campus I'm on, which is Campus Nation, actually opened in 2005. We have 3 distinct campuses as around Geneva. In 1968, we co-created the International Baccalaureate, so with the birth of the IB. Our particular campus is an IB World School, so we run all 4 programs, PYP, MYP, DP and CP. We are probably incomparably international. We have 140 nationalities and 80 mother tongues in our 4,500 students spread across the 3 campuses. We're a not-for-profit educational foundation, and our mission is to actually educate for peace. So really, because we're an inclusive school and we believe in actually every student being completely unique, it was an obvious thing for us to move in a direction where, as well as offering the diploma program, which is very, very academic, to offer another pathway which would suit students who didn't have that skill set that you need to tackle the diplomas. There's nothing about intelligence, it's literally to do with skills. So we launched the IBCP in 2013, and it's called the IBCC then, as you said, and we took the BTEC qualification to be the vocational part of that package, because the idea of the CP, for those people who don't know it, is that it offers a vocational part as well as a traditionally academic part, where every student has to take at least 2 diploma subjects.
Okay, so you've looked at that from an inclusivity point of view, and to address the different styles of learning amongst your students.
Yeah.
Okay, and then obviously thinking about that, that's a bit of a change. It's a change of direction for the school as well. And how did you go about integrating the vocational qualifications into the school teaching and into your delivery plans?
Yeah, as I say, because we are quite a unique school, our parental body believes in education, and the majority of our students will want to go on to further education. In fact, everybody that's left the CP actually has gone on to university. So when we're looking to integrate a sort of a vocational pathway, we needed something that was still going to have academic currency with universities, which is why we chose the BTEC. We also looked at our cohort and decided on the pathways that would make most sense for our students, but also for the parents, who obviously are paying fees and felt that they needed to see something that made sense to them. So we actually offer a business pathway and an art and design pathway. And we delivered the level 3 diploma, which is the equivalence of 2 high-level subjects. So we actually effectively took our timetable and said, okay, if students are taking a BTEC, that's equivalent to 2 higher levels, and that's how it's blocked in the timetable. And we tried to make it really clear to the students, the parents, the staff, that a BTEC has exactly the same academic worth as taking 2 higher level subjects. It's just a question of, do you have a passion for business or art and design? Do you have a desire to focus your energies into one place rather than baccalaureate, which obviously requires 6 subjects across a range of domains? Do you prefer to be assessed continuously, so actually being judged for what you can do, rather than being judged a snapshot after 2 years, which often highlights what you can't do? So the whole idea of the delivery for us was actually just making sure that we made it as attractive as possible, and really tried to make sure that we identify the students who are going to benefit most from having sort of this opportunity to learn in a different way. I mean, the underpinnings of how the BTEC works and the idea of promoting skills and lifelong learning is something we're trying to do anyway. It's not that you could only develop sort of like, you know, the ability for lifelong learning through a BTEC. You can also do it very well through other subjects as part of how we teach, but there's a very different way of assessing the students, and that's what I find particularly appealing, in fact, because you're encouraging them, as I say, to show what they can do.
That's fantastic. That's great. And what do you see as the benefits? I mean, you've mentioned a little bit about the benefit of the learner because they can still progress to higher education.
Yeah.
But do you think there's a specific benefit for the school as well?
I actually think I think for us, I mean, the International School of Geneva, obviously we're quite uniquely placed because we do actually have international recognition. We created the IB diploma. We're a very large school, but I actually think it's really important as an inclusive school that we're actually giving more than one pathway to leave the school, because actually it's fulfilling our mission. Because if you actually say that students are unique and learners are different and they all should be given the opportunity to showcase what they can do, you're never going to do that if you only actually give them one way of showing that. We use a cartoon in our presentations sometimes where you have a tree and you have an elephant, a goldfish and a chimpanzee, and the tagline is, I'm going to judge how good you are by how quickly you climb that tree. And it actually doesn't make any sense, because obviously if you have sort of like long arms and agile feet, then as the monkey you're going to go up the tree, but the goldfish hasn't got a hope in hell. So that doesn't mean the goldfish isn't actually very good at swimming, but we're not judging how well they swim. And I think it's just that whole sort of idea of there's only one way of judging students. And I think it's really important for me anyway, as an educator, that I get the message out there that you have to look at people as wholes. You can't just as whole beings, and we have to actually find out what they're good at rather than trying to work out what they can't do, which I think sometimes the exam system does.
That's a very powerful message. Thank you, Alex. That's great. I think we need to. We've got another session, another bit now for sort of an open panel question and answer session. Susie, have we got some questions that we can go through?
Hi, yes, Eddie, we do. I'll start from the top. So we have a question here from Maura Martin, who has asked, can you clarify exactly what vocational qualifications are?
Okay, that one's for you, Matt.
Yeah, so as I said earlier, vocational qualifications, they're about teaching students the transferable skills which they'll need in life, but also, as Alex has just said, it's about them focusing on a particular vocational area which they've got a real interest in. They're assessed as they go along, rather than putting all the pressure on them after 2 years. And again, as was just said, which is very often a way to show what they can't do rather than what they can do. So vocational is about actually upskilling that student in a particular area, such as business, such as healthcare, such as esports or sport, and letting them work to their interest, developing those skills. But the great thing about them is those skills which they learn on a vocational qualification, they can then take elsewhere and use in a different industry. So, for example, I had a student when I was teaching who didn't want to do A-levels. He wasn't up for doing the 2 years of study. He didn't really like the exams. So he enrolled onto a BTEC, onto a level 3. He managed to get through the BTEC with a pass. He then used those skills and then went and did a very different degree. So he went and did a business degree, having done a sport BTEC. Now he did the business degree, and having only just passed the BTEC, he got a first degree honours in for his business degree, which was fantastic. And from that, he then managed to use those skills again to then start creating his own company. And he now has 3 companies, and he's a very successful entrepreneur and probably on his way to being far richer than I'll ever be. So that is just a little example of what a vocational education can give you.
Thanks, Matt. I have another question here. This is a fairly specific one. It's from Jane Cordes. Can you confirm that the 2-unit reduction / adaptation for BTEC programs, 720 or 1080, applies to international centres too?
Yeah, so this is, I've checked with our marketing team. This is a message that went out in December. And I think some international centres got the UK message, so apologies for that. But this has been raised today. Yes, it does apply to international. There's a 2-unit reduction at 720 and 1080, and then below the 720, there's a 1-unit reduction with no reduction on the 180. So hopefully we will get this message sent out again, I think, to all international centres, as you're now the 3rd centre to contact me today about it.
That's a good one to address in a forum with lots of people then, I think. The next question is from Hassan Qureshi. We are up for introducing vocational qualifications at our school. Who should we consult?
I think we have, whereabouts is that centre? Where's that centre based, or where's that person based? Susie, do you know?
I don't have the information at the moment, but
we
have pop it into the question.
We have regional teams that look after our international schools across the globe. I think initially, though, they can drop myself or Matt an email, and we'll put them in touch with the right person to help them investigate and look into a bit more detail about vocational education.
Thank you. The next question, is it possible to share more information with us about the BTEC qualifications? So a similar sort of inquiry there. That's from Mohan Iyer.
Yes, indeed. We've got some materials that explain a little bit more depth about them. We've got some schools focus guides, and also some materials that will talk to parents. And if you just send us an email, we'll make sure that we can pass these materials out to you, and then we can have a conversation about how it might fit within your school centre.
Great. A question here from Joel Bailey. With many of the international schools having to comply to local Code de l'Éducation or equivalent, how does adding vocational qualifications fit with the requirements of the academy?
Sorry, Susie, can you just ask that question again?
Sorry. With many international schools having to comply to local Code d'Éducation or equivalent, how does adding vocational qualifications fit with the requirements of the academy?
Okay, I think that's a specific question for a country. What we try to do is we try to get international recognition for the vocational programs that we have. We've worked with the IB in recognition in African countries, and we're working across Europe and Asia as well. And I think there is a process there about the local frameworks and having those qualifications sit on those frameworks for local progression. And then obviously for the international progression, we already have that quite well detailed. And I think if we need to have a look at an individual organisation about that recognition, again, if you can message myself or Matt with that, if you send us an email with that, we can work on that. We have a dedicated recognitions team who look at getting that equivalence or recognition statements from those important bodies, so that learners can be confident that the qualification pathways that they're following allow them to tick those requirements in country as well as progression internationally. But sometimes we need to have that individual dialogue to make that happen.
Thanks, Eddie. Another question here. What range of subject areas are covered by BTEC?
Okay, so we currently have a number of different subjects. We have sport, applied science, hospitality, art and design, esports. So basically, I think what we try and aim to do is cover every industry which students would be interested in, and then depending on which ones you want to do, we have different sizes of qualifications. So then the student will obviously take more or less units depending which one they're doing, so they can gain that knowledge which they need. The common ones that students will do would be a 720 guided learning hour or a 1080 guided learning hour, and they're full size qualifications. So in terms of the subject expanse, we've got a very wide variety of subjects which we can offer. And we're always adding new ones. So the esports is something very new to us for this year. And that is because of the demand in the market. And that isn't teaching kids how to play video games. It's very much around the business, the marketing, the hospitality of running esports events, the actual design and what goes into it. And that's a multi-million, billion-pound industry now. So that's a fantastic qualification. And then also other qualifications are our level 3 sports qualification. We have now had that partnered up with Liverpool Football Club, which is a great endorsement for the qualification. It really shows how industry are recognising the BTECs and how they really enhance the students' skills and knowledge to progress into that industry.
Thanks, Matt. Another question here. We've got about 3 more minutes and quite a few questions, so I'll try to get through as many as we can. Apologies if we don't get to your question today. We'll reply to them offline. A couple of you have asked for Matt and Eddie's email addresses. I'll ask my colleague to pop those into the chat box so that you can pick those up if that's okay, guys. So the next question is from Rachel Quandal. We would like to start BTECs and the IBCP in our school in the next couple of years. Would it be possible to get in touch with schools who have done this already so that we can learn from them? I
think that's one for Alex.
Yes, I mean, if you go to the IBO website, so ibo.org, there's a list of all of the schools that are currently running the CP program, and then you might be able to find one that's actually in your country, because as some of the other people have put into the chat as the question function, it does depend a little bit on your sort of national circumstances about how easy or difficult it's going to be to integrate the CP into your school. Certainly, I've helped quite a lot of schools here in Switzerland who've gone down the IBCP pathway, because actually we're under the same federal regulations, and so I can actually explain to them what we've been doing. But yes, perhaps I would actually look there to see if there's anybody nearby. I mean, by all means, you can contact me, but as I say, the Swiss model may well be quite distinct to the one that you're dealing with in your own country.
Wonderful, Alex. Thank you.
We've got a network of schools, so again, we can potentially help out with that, certainly in terms of what the process is.
Thank you. Another question. Once we decide on BTEC, can we count on teacher training and teaching materials from Pearson?
Yes, absolutely. There's a comprehensive support program that we want our centres and our international schools to be successful. So we have quite a program of training. There are resources to support the delivery and assessment of the qualifications. And we have regular sessions focused around CPD to continually support, motivate and upskill the teachers in terms of the delivery of the programs as well.
Super, thank you. This question is from Patricia Mallet. How do we go about convincing local education authorities to acknowledge vocational education as being a valid alternative to academic education?
That one is a long-term strategy. It's something that we're involved in a lot of the continents, and it's knocking on the door and giving the evidence about achievement, about the robustness of the qualification, about the recognition from other international organizations. I think it is also, we need to understand a little bit about the local context, but that's something that we would be very happy to support you with. And then we can use the data where we've been successful in other countries to help provide that as evidence to this organization that they should be looking at that recognition of vocational education that is not just there as a trade skill acquisition, but it is there providing lifelong learning opportunities and the skill sets and the progression opportunities to higher education.
Thank you, Eddie. We'll wrap up the questions there. Apologies we haven't got to all of them, but we will take them offline and answer them for you directly. Matt, I think you have one more poll before we bring the session to a close.
Yes, thank you, Susie. And thanks everyone for your questions. Just one to end on now, either having seen this presentation today, or maybe you've already thought about it. If your centre were to offer vocational qualifications, how would they be implemented? Would they be standalone, so they wouldn't be attached to any other offer? Part of an international A-level or other academic provision? Part of the international baccalaureate career-related programme? Offered to external businesses for upskilling their workforce, or a combination of the above?
And I think just quickly, just whilst you're having to think about that, just obviously the time coming to an end. Just want to thank you everybody for your participation. Feel free to email myself and Matt with questions that you have, and the questions that we haven't answered will come through, and we'll come back to everybody with the either pointing in the right direction or actually getting in touch with you and starting a conversation.
Okay, so if we have a look at the answers here. So a combination of the above is an outright winner there. So that's kind of what we expect. A lot of centres choose different routes to put their vocational qualifications along with. Standalone at 9%, 25% of you part of an international A-level or academic provision, and that's a very common one. It's how it's done in a lot of countries. So students might do 1 or 2 A-levels and then do some vocational along with it to give them those vocational skills. And part of the IBCP is obviously we've spoken about that. It's an increasingly popular way to do it, and then offered to external businesses for upskilling their workforce. And that is an increasingly popular one, which we're seeing starting to happen now as well. So that's great. Thank you very much for your participation in that, and hand over to Susie.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Eddie. And thank you, Alex. And to everyone who has joined us here today, I hope you found the session useful and informative. Certificates of attendance and a link to the recording of this webinar will be sent to you by email. And I'll just give a quick plug for the 3rd webinar in the Big Think series, which takes place on Thursday, the 11th of February. This time the topic is global citizenship, the role international schools can play in saving the world. So just a small one there. And registration is now open on the Big Think webpage. We'll give you a link to that in a follow-up email that will be in your inboxes tomorrow. I do hope you can join us for that webinar too. And I know that Christian has put into the chat our international schools inbox. So if you do have any additional questions that you'd like to ask but didn't get a chance to ask in the Q&A today, please do email us and we'll pass the questions on to the right people. But thank you again and have a great rest of the week. Thank you very much for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.